I'm Myron Medcalf, the Mary Ann Key Book Club, joined by Shannon Gibney, a writer, author, professor, the moderator of our next panel, November 3rd, around this book, Parable of the Sower by the great Octavia Butler. Also on October 6th, we'll have an event with Dr. Stanley, an expert on Octavia Butler's work. Thank you, Shannon, so much for joining us. Thank you so much for agreeing to moderate this. Here's a thought I've had in reading this book, which is so profound. And I know that like Octavia Butler resented the prophet tag, but it's just so hard to listen to this and not think that she wrote this yesterday. But I was thinking a lot about how to read this book. Like, we teach kids how to read, and understand like the actual ability to read. But with this material, which is just so amazing and layered, how do you digest a work like this that is just so complex in the way that Octavia Butler has laid it out?
Yeah, and I think that, that is the beauty of the written word. That's the beauty of literature. There's so many ways in, and there's no right or wrong way in for anybody, so it is literally like you get in where you fit in, she wrote this in 1993. I read it first shortly after that. This is probably my fourth reading of it. And it's just like, I feel like, there's certain things I remember, but it also feels different to me every time that I read. I get something different. I'm getting something different from the reading in, 2022 than I did in, 2005, than I did in 1998, than I did. And so, I think that that's what's really fun about reading in general. And then this book that we picked for this book club in particular, Yeah.
It's a really, your fourth reading. Like, I think a lot of people who are participating in this book club are reading it again, probably. It's been around for a long time. I think almost in different stages of life, you might see it differently. Like when I see Lauren, I have three daughters, 14, 12, and 6. And I'm like, my goodness, like her journey, her courage, but also just what she endures. As a Black woman, I wonder about like that perspective. And when you read something like this, when you read this journey of a young woman, like how does that affect you? How does that impact you when you're, probably can relate, I would imagine, to some of these things she's dealing with?
Yeah, she's a young woman too. She's 15, right? So, and it's written in first person, right? So you really get deeply into her psyche, not just like what's going on around her, but how she filters that, how she sees that, and this really, if it's not post-apocalyptic world, it's a world descending into the apocalypse for sure. I think that that's one of the powerful things about this book as well, is that Butler really presents this well-rounded view of, this very complicated person. She's not perfect. One of the things that I think, like the pitfalls that Black writers can fall into sometimes is sort of like, okay, since the mainstream white literary establishment and like the white world kind of sees, kind of maligns Black women in these certain ways, then, well, I'm going to write like the Black woman character that is, perfect in a way, or doesn't, doesn't have character flaws and it's just like not interesting. It's not realistic. It's not, in other words, that's kind of like another form of racism. Like we don't get to be, we don't get to be fully human in the way that, white people and others do. And I think she really, Lauren is not perfect. Lauren is prescient, and she's, very intelligent. And she's really struggling with this relationship. I'm at the beginning part of the book reading it again, and she's really struggling with this relationship with her father. and the small community that's very repressive, that they're in, but they're alive, right? Which is a lot better than a lot of other people are doing. And then she feels this like call within her, about this sort of incipient religion, and Butler talked about when she was writing this, like when she herself as the writer felt this character going in this direction, and she was like, oh no, like this is so, because she kind of had an instant kind of she did not identify strongly with any religious system. So yeah,
it's fascinating. You talked about she's alive, right? So I think about that conceptually, in that despite everything that's happening, she is still here, and that has been such a theme, not even just in the last couple of years for Black folks forever, right? And so many things that are written, I think about the Black experience, center on survival, persistence, determination. And I wonder sometimes, like, how you find the hope in that. Because I believe Octavia Butler, I believe the ultimate goal here is to say, yes, these things are very heavy. The things I'm talking about are difficult to digest, but also, if you're alive, you still have an opportunity to impact the world in a different way. How do you, I guess, what is the hope in this work for people who are maybe reading it and going, wow, this is a lot?
And it's interesting that you asked that about Octavia Butler, because she in general is not the person you pick up if you're looking for hope. Like, her stuff can be so bleak. Like, I can't read the Pattern Master series again. It was just too, it was too bleak. But I really feel like and that was earlier in her career, and I feel like, though, by the time she gets to Parable of the Sower, and then Parable of the Talents, and of course she passed, unfortunately, before she could do the third one, which was going to be Parable of the Trickster. I mean, I feel like there is a lot of hope, for Butler. Like, I see the movement, not everybody is going to read all of Butler's work. And, I was like, in my 20s, like, this woman, she's like this amazing, like, Black feminist science fiction writer. Like, she was an anomaly then. Luckily now there's a lot more. But I really feel like Lauren is a hopeful character. She believes that she can create something that has not been created before, through this religion, and also through this incipient community that they're forging. Because really this is a novel about community. That's the other thing that I'm struck by reading it again, is like, yes, this is in this young woman's psyche, it's in her mind, it's in her body, whatever. But it's like, every chapter is like, and this neighbor, and this is their backstory, and like this person that we met on the road, and this is what they were doing, and like this is what's happening with like the water, this is what's happening with the gasoline, this is what's so it's a very vibrant and multifaceted and constantly changing, right, the religion of Earthseed world that she has created for us. And yeah, I definitely think it's hopeful. And I'm biased as a writer and artist and professor myself. Like, I take great hope just in art itself, in the beauty of the fact that something like this exists, and that we can all come together and have different experiences engaging it, but then connect through that, through our own very different experiences, to talk about what's going on here and now in the Twin Cities in 2022, and nationwide, in 2022. I think that's fascinating. And I think it's fascinating too, like, okay, I'm reading it, I'm like, okay, well, things are not burning up everywhere, and people don't have walls up, and people aren't getting shot. But it's like, the California, this takes place in California, right? And 2024, and it's like, yeah, stuff is burning up, like, there's all kinds of stuff that, is actually happening, it looks different, but how does that then relate to what's going on here and now?
Yeah. I mean, it's just profound. I like what you said. I think one of the messages is if we are to remain intact, it's going to demand community. 30 years later, still resonates. It's amazing. October 6th, our event with Dr. Stanley, and then November 3rd, we'll have our event with Shannon Gibney and our other panelists. Thank you all for joining us. Please read the book, and we'll talk soon.